Well, welcome and thanks for coming. Some of you came from a long way, and I hope that this panel discussion will be rewarding and informative. And before we get started, I'd just like to recognize my co-producer, Jill Feldman, who is out in the audience there. You want to stand up, Jill? Thank you. We're going to have a panel discussion tonight, and let me introduce our panelists, and they're going to each give a short presentation, and then we're going to open it up for a Q&A. So I'll open with some introductory remarks and see if I can start an argument or two, and then we'll go to our panelists. So I'd like to introduce Britt Andreatta, who's the Senior Learning Consultant for Leadership Development and Talent and Management at LinkedIn. And she was with lynda.com for many years, and she has made the transition, along with Linda, to LinkedIn. So I'm excited to have her here. George Tomas is President of Interactive Virtual Learning, and he has a lot to say about what he's doing in terms of training for the military. And Steve Wright, who is a Director, Sector Navigator for Doing What Matters. He's with the California Community Colleges. And finally, Amy Rouse, who was with AT&T University, had to cancel last week because she had a irreconcilable schedule conflict. So we have substituted for tonight is Jennifer Gibson, who is the CEO of PD Learning Network. So welcome to our panelists. I want to say a few words about what's happening in higher education. We used a couple of cliches in promoting this, perfect storm and disruption, the D word as well. But before we get started, I just want to ask everyone, do you guys remember record stores? Right, remember those? You used to go there. Now, I know there's still some record stores around that, have incense and sell a little vinyl, but record stores, that business got disrupted pretty badly by the internet, as did publishing, journalism, retail, and all kinds of other industries. The internet giveth and the internet taketh away. And I think that's really true for a lot of places. But I've been in higher education for 40 years, and I'd like to be able to stand up here and tell you it's really changed. But it hasn't. It's pretty much the same as it always was. And just as a data point to that, the word lecture actually means to read. That's because in medieval universities, books were not printed. This is pre-Gutenberg. They were handwritten, so they were very valuable and very rare. So they used to get the guy with the book to come in and read, and people would try to write as much as possible. And that's the way information was transmitted. And luckily, we're no longer doing that. Oh, I'm sorry, we are. So just a little bit of history about where we are in terms of higher education. And this is a Forbes article. It says higher education is now ground zero for disruption. And there's been a lot of books written about where we are with this. This one by Clay Christensen is particularly good, Disrupting Class, The End of College. And there are a couple of forces here that need to be considered. One is the economics of higher education are unsustainable. The blue line is CPI, the yellow line is the cost of medical, and the red line is the cost of higher education. And the burden of tuition and room and board is driving families and students into deep and sometimes unrecoverable debt. This bottom blue line represents student debt today. It exceeds all forms of consumer debt in U.S. households. But this personalizes it. Here's a student who paid faithfully for 23 years, borrowed $26,000, paid back $32,000, and he still owes $45,000. And by the way, student debt, no bankruptcy or forgiveness allowed, only death or total disability frees you from, and also you can't collect Social Security or Medicare while you still have student debt. So this is hot off the press from today. It's comic if it weren't so sad, but I got this from NBC News today. U.S. Marshals arrest Houston man for 1987 student loan debt. And they arrived at his apartment in full battle gear. So if you have a student loan, expect a knock on your door soon.
They do that in Houston all the time.
Do they? Yeah. So there are lots of destabilizing risks and new technologies, MOOCs, badges, Khan Academy. There are all kinds of things happening in terms of new learning methodologies and technologies. We have a changing economy and job market, but I think the one that is probably most disconcerting is this questionable ROI on education, and that is the disconnect between what education has provided and promises to provide and what employers want. There was a survey conducted by Gallup that indicated that 11% of business leaders strongly agree that today's graduates have the skills and competencies they need. In contrast, college and university chief academic officers, 96% of them agree that they were extremely or somewhat confident in their institution's ability to prepare students. So 11% versus 96% is a pretty big disconnect. And more people are challenging this notion of the investment that they're making in higher education. Also, 50% of students with a BA are either underemployed or unemployed, and this book addresses that. Salaries are flat for them. And so you say this, if all this is true, why aren't colleges going out of business? Well, it turns out they are. They battled the enrollment drops. Sweetbriar College closed last year after 114 years. And this is the list of colleges that have closed in the last 5 years, and it goes on. So I'm not predicting that colleges are going to go away. I think brand name colleges and even large state colleges are going to be around, but I think there's going to be a shakeout in small private colleges. And this is University of Phoenix enrollment. It's affecting them as well. They're half of what they were at 2010. The other thing is Bloomberg found the average number of private four-year colleges that have closed or acquired doubled in the last 3 years. So this seems to be an accelerating trend as well. Who's going to fill the need? Learning is not going to stop. Education is not going to stop, but it's going to change dramatically, and that's what we're here to talk about tonight. So without further ado, I'll introduce Britt Andriotta.
Hi, welcome. Just a little bit about myself. I have been in the intersection of leadership and learning for 25 years since I got my doctorate in that topic. And I was a professor and a dean at UC Santa Barbara and also at Antioch University. And it was on a panel here in 2010 that Linda Weinman and I were on the same panel. And after we were talking about online learning. And she recruited me after that. So I jumped from higher ed into lynda.com, first as an author, and then as the director of learning and development, where I worked on the professional skills of all of our employees. And then my own research and interest area has taken me deeply into neuroscience of learning, and so I now have a book out on that topic, and I speak regularly on the neuroscience of learning, helping corporations change their learning approaches to really maximize how the brain actually learns. It turns out that most of our educational techniques don't actually work with how the brain learns, so I think there's lots of good disruptions that are in order. I wanted to just introduce you to a little bit to the two companies. So for those of you who don't know, you must have been under a rock if you didn't know this. But back in May, LinkedIn purchased lynda.com, and now lynda.com is operating still as lynda.com, but now as a LinkedIn company. So the brand is shared. So a little bit about LinkedIn. This is a company page on LinkedIn. There's 400 million members of LinkedIn. It's an average of 200,000 people create a new profile per day, or 2 per second around the world. Our fastest growing market is China, and we're the only social media company allowed to operate, Western social media company allowed to operate on the internet in China. The vision for LinkedIn is to create economic opportunity for every member of the global workforce, all 3 billion professionals. And so the goal is to do that by helping people have a profile, having every company have a company page, having every job that's available be listed, having every skill you need to get those jobs clear so that you can achieve that. And we also work with higher ed so that every university has a university page to help students and their families make the choices that lend them to the careers they want to have. And then finally, we want our members to be able to share knowledge. And so the other thing that I would argue is disrupting education is media and who owns and produces knowledge. Once publishing started to fall apart, it changed who the experts are, and they're no longer the professors, and you can get knowledge and information from all kinds of experts, and experts can produce their information without necessarily going through publishing houses anymore. So I think that's part of the mix here. We have value propositions for members. If you don't have a LinkedIn profile yet, you might want to check it out. But we help people get clear about their professional identity. We help them network with other professionals, and we help them gain and share knowledge. That'll be the space that Lynda plays. We also have products for our enterprise clients. So the talent solutions products that LinkedIn sells, most recruiters cannot do their job without working with the talent solutions that LinkedIn has. We also have solutions, marketing solutions and sales solutions for all kinds of corporate customers. A little bit about Lynda. So Lynda has been in existence for 20 years and has these different channels. So within the channels, a variety of online training courses are offered. Every course is curated with an expert in the field who is both not only knowledgeable, but is a practitioner as well and can convey that knowledge through a guided learning path, a carefully constructed learning path on camera so that it becomes bite-sized, digestible videos that are 3 to 5 minutes each, and then put together in a course that can be 1 hour, 4 hours long, depending on the depth of the material. At this time, there's over 4,000 courses in the library, and we add about 25 per week. And people can buy individual memberships as well as we sell corporate solutions, enterprise solutions to higher ed, public sector, and corporations. So those are our client segments. A little bit about who our academic clients are. Lynda.com had already relationships with higher ed, and LinkedIn had their own relationships, so there's a really lovely marriage there. But Lynda.com has been purchased by all 8 of the Ivy League schools, 60% of all universities and colleges in the US, and 93 of the 100 largest. Most higher ed institutions are using us to flip the classroom or to augment learning that the faculty is already doing. Perfect example, UCSB has purchased licenses for faculty and staff to engage in their own professional development. UCLA purchased licenses for student, staff, and faculty, so every member of the campus community has access. Corporations buy it for the same reason. We're also in 300 of the community colleges, 2-year schools, and a lot of K through 12s, and again used either to further the professional development of faculty and staff and or augment the classroom. And what typically people are looking for is augmenting instruction, providing tech or computer support on training on software skills or hardware skills, particularly with IT budgets being cut. Lynda is often used as a substitute or a replacement for that. And then in addition, there's professional skills. So core professional skills like communication, productivity, management, et cetera, as well as career development, how to interview, how to build your resume, that kind of thing. How to code. You know, people come on to lynda.com and learn how to code so that they have more career options available to them. Corporate clients, LinkedIn was a member before they bought us. Adobe actually uses Lynda to teach all of their own employees how to use Adobe products. So we've been in a lot of big corporations, and we have a lot of We have sales teams all over the world. I had an interesting stat on our corporate clients here. We have more than 10,000 enterprise clients across 52 countries, including more than half of the Fortune 50, and then 2,500 small and medium business size companies. In the public sector, we're used by federal, state, and local. For example, the New York City Police Department requires their officers to take the conflict resolutions course that we have at lynda.com. It's part of their required curriculum. We're in the CIA, FBI, the White House, Office of the President, and again, every branch of the military uses lynda.com. And most professional settings use it for professional training, so every organization needs to keep its employees up to snuff on their skills and continually growing and developing so they can achieve the organization's goals. So typically it's used as part of learning and development as an on-demand self-service learning or integrated into a flipped classroom approach. That's what I did at Lynda. We used the product and then I would meet with the managers and leaders and we would do a deeper dive into the skills. Again, to provide that tech computer support and also to develop those professional skills. So that's kind of how folks are using us. And then the flipped classroom is something that really is getting a lot of legs. The neuroscience shows that this is a really valuable way to learn. But you essentially have some of the basic learning happen before the in-person event. So people might watch a Lynda course, come together. Then the instructor is freed up to take that information in a deeper dive, do more hands-on skill building and practice in the room. And then you can follow up with extended learning afterwards. Sal Khan of the Khan Academy has approached this similarly with working with K through 12 schools and flipping the classroom. And then at lynda.com, I built our management and leadership training, and so one of our programs had these skills, and it was a 25-hour program, but it included 12 to 15 hours in person, but we leveraged lynda.com courses, and these were some of the courses that were pre-assigned for the training that people did. So we had management fundamentals, leading with emotional intelligence, coaching and developing your employees, delegating tasks to your team, conflict resolution fundamentals, management tips. A lot of people are surprised to learn that we're in the soft skills. I call them human skills. But a lot of companies are using Lynda for that process. So that's a little bit about Lynda. Where am I on my time? I wanted to wax poetic about education for a minute. So the couple things that I would just add to the conversation about education is that information is not the same as instruction. And we have a lot of sources of information that's very different than teaching somebody a new skill. And even when people use different learning strategies, it comes down to just because somebody attended something or completed something doesn't mean they learned it. And even if you learn it, it doesn't mean you changed your behavior. How many of us know how to diet and exercise, but do we actually do it, right? We know what we're supposed to do, but are we changing behavior? And so every company, every organization is faced with that challenge of how do I continue to up-level the skill set and the knowledge and the behaviors that I need for folks to be successful in the work that they're doing. And also coming out of neuroscience, what's really interesting is MRIs are allowing us to look at the brain and what happens to the brain when you're learning in ways that we've never been able to see before. And some neuroscientists are arguing that learning should now be defined as something that makes a permanent neurological shift in the brain, that you actually see it on the MRI, that there's a shift. And you can actually see that. And then I would just argue that, yes, learning can be everywhere, but we still very much have a need for someone to be in control of constructing a learning path, that we know what the beginning point is, there's a story arc, there's behavior change, and someone's making sure that mastery occurred. I'm totally fine watching a baking class and getting some baking tips, but if I go to a restaurant, I want to make sure that people running that restaurant went through all the skill building to know how to not, poison me while I'm eating there, etc. So, and same with brain surgery and engineers and pilots.
I think that there's going to be some interest here in the topic I'm going to be covering, which is badges or micro-credentials, as they're more preferably called now. And basically what we're going to be talking about is evidence of learning or skills, okay? And as you'll note from the first slide here, the project that I'm leading is funded by the Department of Defense, U.S. Department of Defense. We are sponsored and being monitored by ADL. ADL is the Advanced Distributed Learning Group, working with the Department of Defense. And if you want to think of them like the DARPA for distributed learning, that's essentially what they are. So we're really very honored and proud to be working on this project. The military takes badging very seriously. They want to develop or find badges and micro-credentials that can be interpreted, and the key word I'm going to use here is transferable. Okay? Transferable badges is what our project is all about. Either trying to find standards out there that will allow that, or that we can develop that. And actually, the way it's going, we're developing it. So let's take a look at what we're going to be talking about. I'm going to assume that there's quite a wide range of people here who may not be fully familiar with badges. So I'm going to walk through a little simple tutorial about what we're talking about. Definition of badges, show you some samples, what they look like. Talk about some of the current standards that are out there. And honestly, it's a Wild West show out there. If you've looked at various parties who issue badges, it's all over the place. We're going to talk about the deficiencies of the badges that we've looked at and researched in terms of how transferable they are. And then lastly, I'm going to talk about what the military is looking for in the badges that they're going to eventually use across all their branches. So digital badges, basically they're an online representation, such as an icon or a certificate of an award for an earned skill, okay? Competency, skill, whatever you want to call it. Open badges were developed not too long ago. Mozilla, I think, was really the first party that had a significant effort at doing it, and they essentially morphed into an organization called the Badge Alliance now. So badgealliance.org is a place you might want to go to. I think it's an excellent resource for looking at what open badges are supposed to be like. Essentially, the idea of the open badges is they're not just an icon, they're not just an image, but essentially they have additional information about the earned skill that tells you more about how it was derived, what it's all about, what it's related to, etc. And essentially, when you look at the open badge standards from the Badge Alliance, they assert that it's free and open source, so anybody can use them. They're transferable. Their definition of transferable isn't exactly what we've developed, and I'll talk about that later. But essentially that you can collect these badges from multiple sources. They'll look the same, or at least be in somewhat of a standardized format, and that they're stackable, that you can build upon a series of them, and that they're evidence-based, that they meet certain criteria. This is one that we picked off from a website that exists out there. It's called Badges for Vets. And this is the icon-type badge, where simply, as you would be in Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts, get a little icon that says, with a title on it, you have experience in aviation, okay, or whatever it might be. So very simple. It doesn't tell you a whole lot, not really transferable, okay. It might look great on your Facebook page for friends of yours that come there, but if you want to trade this, if you want to go out of the military and get a job, say at AT&T or someplace, it's not going to do you much good. So this is starting to get a little better. This is what edX issues, and basically this is what we call the certificate type. And there's a lot more here than meets the eye just on first inspection. In essence, you have not only the identity of the issuer, the University X and its logo, who received the badge, what it was for. In this case, it's for a course as opposed to some type of certification or what have you. And then down below, very, very importantly, you can't probably read it in the back, but at the very bottom it says Verified Certificate of Achievement. That's actually a link. You click on that, and there's essentially a ping back to the issuing entity that it indicates whether or not this is, in fact, the certificate that they issued. Very important. We'll talk about that in a minute. And I wanted to show you what I call the badge ecosystem. this is essentially how it all comes together. On the far left side, essentially you have 3 different issuers of badges. Might be a cooking school, some volunteer program, a school, whatever it might be. Each of them, in their own way, with their own type of badge, issues a badge. It goes to the learner, right there on the left, and that learner has what at least is generally called a badge backpack. It's a repository of all the aggregated badges that this person got from a variety of issuers. Now, what can the person do with those badges? Once the person has the badges themselves as physical objects or links to where they are, the 2 different types. Basically, you can post it on your website. You can put it on one of your social media pages, Facebook. You can send it to LinkedIn. You can post it on LinkedIn. In fact, I'm seeing more and more of the badges being posted on LinkedIn now. And give it to your potential employer and so forth. Those are all the things you can do. Here's the key. The learner is a party who aggregates these badges or has a trusted aggregator, okay, we'll talk more about that later, who stores all those badges, and now it's the learner who controls their transcript, okay, as opposed to a higher ed institution where I have to essentially request the transcript, I have to fill out forms, I have to wait however long it takes for them to go through the process, and that's only my school. Okay? How about all of the other things that I've gotten as evidence of my learning? Certification programs with Pearson, with Microsoft, et cetera, where are all of those things? Okay? So the idea here, this is a very important idea, that there is in the badge concept either a ability to aggregate badges or to have somebody aggregate them for you from many different sources. And so you can see the importance of having the badges be standardized. Okay? So here's the problem, though. Okay? There is no current generally accepted standard, but there are some that are more frequently used out there and accepted as, let's say, more transferable than not. I mentioned already the Badge Alliance Open Badges. Pearson Acclaim. Pearson does a lot of, certification of people for different things. They're issuing badges now. They have, I think, a very nice badge design. And then there's the XAPI standard. That stands for Experience API. This isn't really a badge in the sense of what I just described, an icon or certificate. It's basically a phrase, actor, verb, object. John Smith passed the LSAT test. That's an XAPI statement, okay? And this person can accumulate thousands of these XAPI statements. Generally speaking, it's more usable internal to an organization, okay, like AT&T, where they have systems and very sophisticated software that will look at this aggregation of all these different XAPI statements and make some sense out of it, okay? More difficult to use externally across many different organizations. So here's what we found in looking at the different standards. The deficiencies are, in some cases, depending on who it is, the verifiability that's a trusted, competent issuer, okay, as opposed to my mom gave me a badge for doing X, Y, Z. Okay? This is big, especially when you talk about transferability, is the robustness of the information about the earned skill. Those of you that are from higher ed, think of this as being an articulation process. When you articulate courses between 2 institutions, you have to have a lot of information about those 2 courses to say, yep, this one is equal in value to this one. Okay? So what we're wanting to do in what we're designing is make sure we can make that badge very robust in terms of the information that it has or that it's linked to. Okay? Ability to interpret, classify, or let's call it equivalence, the type and level of earned skill between receiving entity and issuing entity. That's where the articulation comes in. Is what I earned here equivalent to something over here? If so, what? Like a position description the skills that this position requires, et cetera, et cetera. And as we saw on the edX badge, verifiability of non-tampering by the learner. You don't want it to be hacked by the learner so that they gave themselves a terrific badge. Okay? So here's what we're going for, and I'm going to go through these pretty quickly, but I'll be happy to speak with any of you afterwards. We actually have a really, I think, an elegant design for this already. But what the military wants is they want multi-level granularity. Think macro badge, micro badge, nano badge. Basically a nesting of information from the, let's say, the programmer degree to the courses, to the topics, to the competencies, all the way down, and you can conceivably earn a badge for every one of them. Lifelong continuum. We're not just talking about the Navy or what have you. From infancy on, basically, someday, and I'll show it to you in just a minute, if everybody eventually goes to this type of standard, everybody's going to have like a personal DNA for learning, okay? Everything, all your competencies, all your skills from earliest time on. They use referential taxonomies to facilitate equivalencing of competencies across domains. The military wants to make sure it works across academic, corporate, and military organizations, not just within the military. In the future phase, we're working with SRI. If you're familiar with them, brilliant organization in Palo Alto. In fact, SRI, they invented Siri. They have an artificial intelligence engine that compares two taxonomies, in effect, this badge to this badge, what it represents in these organizations, and tells you automatically which ones it's most likely like. Okay? Designed to ultimately become and here's the final payoff. Designed to ultimately become a fully vetted, fully automated, personally controlled digital resume. In the future, you're not going to make out your own resumes. All of your accumulated badges will be your resume because they're fully vetted. Nobody has to question that you made it up when you made up your resume. It's completely vetted. And we're collaborating specifically with the Naval Education and Training Command now. We're about to add the U.S. Air Force Air University to that as well. Very quickly, for those of you that come from higher ed, you'll recognize this. You have your curriculum database on the left. It's composed of programs, degrees, and courses, and so on. The course outline has currently requisites, SLOs, among other things. Eventually, you're going to have badges in there. Okay? You're going to have the specification for what badges can be earned in this course. Okay? And the metadata from the badges will look like that, and eventually it'll feed not only potentially your transcript, but it'll issue a badge to the individual. This is like the final slide, and this is the one that tells the story of how large a scale we're looking at this. Essentially, the way we're designing the badge, it will be able to handle academic degrees and all of their subcategories of knowledge, skills, competencies, etc. Your profession, the jobs, the skills you learn in all of those, your hobbies and interests. Just think of all the major classifications of a resume. Okay? Basically, if the badges will be nested, it will be capable of handling all of these, and in effect, you can walk into some place and basically give them your electronic resume, your learning DNA from the time you started. That, in a nutshell, is the project, and I thank you for your attention.
You imagine everything you've ever learned being disaggregated into little badges that summarized on LinkedIn, so somebody in some country around the world can say, "You're the one I want." Okay, well, I took the idea of the perfect storm and tried to take the analogy further, navigating the storm. How many here have gone to a community college? Hey, more. Yeah, that's better. That's better. A couple more. When it comes to the cost of education, I think we can all agree that the community colleges are an exceptional deal, and they are an open access institution. So it's probably one of the most wonderful opportunities we have here in California and the United States. And I'm very proud to be associated with them. I want to take the student's point of view. and about this storm, this perfect storm of education, because it's one thing to identify everything you've done, digital badges, et cetera, but the real question is, where are you going? And as we get better and better at capturing and classifying what we know and who we are already, where's the motivation element? Who are we? What are we going to become? And that's the side of education that isn't really captured by technology. And it's kind of a segue into my topic. But first I wanted to mention that I am associated with the community college system. I have a grant, and within the community college system there's a economic workforce development group which focuses primarily on career technical education. And that's where I am. And in that group there's a program called Doing What Matters. And the focus of that program that I'm in is to really try to separate what are we doing that's effective and what it is we're not doing effective. And I get a lot of my support and guidance in the work that I do by working with a nonprofit called CNED. And it's kind of like a think tank. And on a weekly basis, I talk to CNED, which consists of Guy Smith and Scott Young. Where's Scott? Raise your hand. There you go. It's my think tank right there. The California Community College Chancellor's Office, it's important to realize there's 113 colleges. Actually, almost 112 or 113. One of them's kind of like Pluto. 1 month it is, 1 month it is. 2.5 million students, and annual budget $7.7 billion. Sobering when you think about that. And all of these colleges are associated in districts, some one college district, some more, but they operate like independently operated fiefdoms. They're very decentralized. And so wandering into this as part of my program, I have a team of people. And oh my goodness, one of those people is in this room. Paula, could you please stand? No? Paula is the Deputy Sector Navigator for this region, the South Central Coast region. About 7 colleges, right? 8. And I'm the Sector Navigator, so I have the whole state, and all these other people are Deputy Sector Navigators for other regions. The scope of our activities are what we call ICT, Information Communications Technologies and Digital Media. On the left, you see the parts of that sector that are typically addressed by bachelor's degrees or higher. And on the right, you see what we call the hybrid sectors, where middle skills jobs are more appropriate. So once again, where are you going in this storm? And middle skills jobs are about 80% of the opportunity, and certainly for community college students, the biggest part. I mentioned briefly that the program that I'm in is very much focused on being effective about getting people into jobs. So there's a lot of wonderful things they do in the community college system. I'm not interested in modern poetry. I'm not interested in somebody wanting to be a graphic artist with a new video game. I'm interested in finding the pathways to get people into work. Rent, diapers, and food. Those are my 3 most important obligations. So this set of goals right here, let's just take one, the third one there, get Californians into open jobs. So we're not going to try to get Californians prepared for jobs that are not open. So you see how it works? Kind of like that. Okay. All right. So out of all that scope of work that we have, let's just take one little slice. Let's look at IT networking, sometimes called IT infrastructure, and ask ourselves, if you were in that field or wanted to get in that field or thought you might want to get into that field, how would you get one of those jobs? Well, we've done exhaustive research. 3 years or more, a number of people, a number of focus groups, a lot of paid studies and that sort of thing. We've pretty much broken down the educational benchmarks that someone might go through to get a job or career in IT networking. Right now, high school, if you're in a Cyber Patriots program and you get your A+ certification, you can go out and get a job right away and work in cybersecurity. If you go to a community college, the next level there, and get some sort of credential that we offer, it's probably good within 10 miles of that community college. But if you get a specified third-party certification, A+, CompTIA, cybersecurity, that sort of thing, you're much more likely to get a job. There's relatively low demand anywhere in IT for AAs or ASs. However, a bachelor's degree, still to this day, it's kind of a de facto knee-jerk thing. I think most employers see the bachelor's degree as an opportunity to prove that you have the soft skills necessary to multitask and get lots of things done. But the most important criteria for a job in IT networking is 10 years experience. They can place those people all day long, doesn't matter whether they have degrees or whatever. And those people have to keep training. So this little pathway would look different if it were digital media, if it were software development, if it were entertainment. This is IT networking. So as I mentioned, the first step these days, and I just want to put in a plug for the Cyber Patriots program. If you're associated with the K through 12 or high school in particular, and you hear about this program, get involved. It is getting kids from all over the inner city and everything else hugely involved in STEM and competitive teams, and they love it. They're up till midnight trying to get this stuff figured out. It's the best that we've had for awakening these kids. Naturally, it's after school. You wouldn't dream of putting anything like this in the actual classroom. But then after that, where do people go? This is the perfect storm. Guy wants to talk about the perfect storm. This is the perfect storm right here, all on one page. So you have your public 113 community colleges, 23 CSUs, 10 UCs, all the private colleges, third-party certifications, and now increasingly boot camps, MOOCs, MOOPs, digital badges. We know that certifications are very important as a validation of what people know these days, primarily because a lot of the colleges have defaulted in coming up with good validation strategies for what people know, and the certification companies in IT networking, IT infrastructure, have filled that gap beautifully. Meanwhile, more MOOCs and MOOPs continue to grow to augment people's education, and just so you know, you can go to school online and get your computer science degree from Georgia Tech. It's only about 75% less than going there in person, so I don't get the value. But, and as mentioned previously, digital badges are really emerging. Mozilla came up with the idea originally. I think Pearson Acclaim is moving it into the enterprise space. But as George indicated, you can get validation for what you know, and you can be searched worldwide. So just very quickly, in the community colleges, what's our role in terms of this perfect storm? How do we help people navigate? Well, our focus has been to remove the confusion. With 113 colleges, there's over 2,000 courses in IT with different descriptions and that sort of thing. So we want to take a very professional product development approach, look across the 113 colleges, but primarily look at the industry and say, what does the industry really require, and what do we have that matches that? So rather than do one little pilot project here, we thought the most important thing was to be right. Now, I got a 23-year history with product development with GT and Verizon. One thing I learned is you can't be wrong. You have to be right. And so we're not playing around here. We're not saying, well, let's try this and see if anybody gets a job. We really need to come up with things that work. So we came up with a series of products that meet these criteria. The two of them are called branded pathways. They're statewide pathways that people can follow to get jobs. And then we have a couple of regional strategies that help optimize the investment the state has in community colleges that can help people become more successful. So the strategy for a statewide branded pathway is there have to be over 20,000 jobs available in the state. The skill sets have to be vetted by industry, which gets back to it has to really be right. I'm not going to advocate anybody's student go through a series of courses that are not going to get them a job. It's just I feel irresponsible. I feel like I'm wasting their time. It really hurts me when people go to school and they get all excited and they spend their time, they go home, they tell everybody what they're doing, and then they go out there and they can't get a job. I mean, to me, that's criminal. So we designed these so people can get entry-level jobs, 6 to 10 months, rent, diapers, food, and that 80% of any student cohort can get the job. And then there's further credentials and that sort of thing. And the skill sets, the training should be available at 80% of the colleges. So, for example, the IT technician pathway, and I've got some flyers on this later if you're interested. What we did here is, with an incredible amount of research, we found out that the entry-level job here is computer retail sales. Anybody can get a job in computer retail. You can actually, with 2 hours of training, you can get a job selling phones at Costco. But if you want to really be good at it, you just might need to have some of these skill sets, like an A+ certification, business office essentials, information systems, and that sort of thing. Our students could do really well if they get that skill set, and then they get a job selling computers or that sort of thing. From there, this is where help desk placement agencies recruit people for help desk jobs. They go into all of your retail stores, and that's where they recruit, right off the floor. So that's the pathway. Once again, real jobs, real people, real money, real rent. And so this is a whole process that could be accomplished in about 1.5 years. We've designed it for the student to finish in about 2.5 years so they can work and achieve things. That's the IT technician pathway, and we're open on this strategy to working with lynda.com, with working any of the digital badge things. As far as we're concerned, this pathway is generic. It is not exclusive to the community college system. We post this pathway on our website to advise people how to get the skill sets, and then we turn to the community colleges and we say, do you have any classes that match this? And on our website, we have community colleges up and down the state saying, yes, I have these 5 or these 3 or whatever. So when you go to our website, that's what you see. You see a pathway that's generic that could fit with any digital badge provider, that could fit with lynda.com, that could fit with AT&T's training infrastructure or whatever. It's generic, but it works, and it gets people jobs. You could be at home alone, and you could decide that you're just going to start taking training on your own. You get those skill sets, you get those certifications. You don't even need to go to community college. That's what this pathway is. We did the same thing for a business information worker, which is the first level, get yourself a job in a business. We're following up with a business information worker too. And right now, through this approach and voluntarily encouraging colleges to show us what courses they have that match it, 75% of the California community colleges are offering this program. We've recognized that there are issues and demands in software development, and I don't know if you're for those of you who live in the Bay Area, probably nobody here today that want to get into software development, if you wanted to find out what the California community colleges had to offer, you have to go on 28 different websites. We're going to put it all on one, and just for software development, along with some excellent advice on how to get into the field. So we've been hiring people, talk to Google, talk to Microsoft, everything else, find out exactly how do you get those jobs. Not pretend how, not how some faculty member thinks how. How does the industry actually say this is what you got to know? And we're doing the same thing for entertainment. In the zone here in Los Angeles, where most of the, how do you say it, non-overtime work is done, we have 28 colleges. And we also have in those colleges adjunct faculty that are entertainment professionals who, when they're not working on a project, are teaching filmmaking, editing, stage design. These are the best people in the industry. And they're right there. Nobody knows about them. We're putting them all on one website and with design pathways to take people through. So in order to navigate this storm, we think the most important thing is the pathway. We think that gets you out of a lot of trouble that way. We're trying to be professional about how we design that pathway. And we're very open to collaboration. The importance of the community college system is that it be relevant to the population. And the way we become relevant and stay relevant is to offer good curriculum and to work with all the other providers so the students succeed. And that's how we navigate. You know that boat? I do. I'll have some of these flyers available later if you want to see about that course.
Thank you, Steve.
Okay, I get to be the disruptor tonight. I'm not on the flyer. They found me in Santa Barbara. I actually am a CEO of a startup. We launched, February 1st, so I'm a little new at this. Anyway, I want to thank all the panelists tonight. What a great presentation, and I love the topic. My background is also K-12 education. Is there anybody here that's a teacher from that particular vertical? Come on, I know one. Thank you. Couple. Okay, great. So I think you've had a lot of insight into higher ed already with our presenters. So I want you to journey with me on a snapshot into what we're doing, and this is really about K-12 education and this learning behind what it means beyond the credential, okay? And we have digital badges, so you've seen this theme tonight. And with this lens, let's go on this journey and look at this particular vertical, because what I think you're going to see is something that's similar to other sectors. So this group of teachers got together. It's not a joke. I'm not going to go there. But we had this question, and the question was, how can we provide training for teachers that's meaningful and relevant to the classroom, and that really has an impact on learning? And as we started to explore that problem, we spent this 2 years looking at solutions. And wait, before I go there, I think I'm going to stop for a second and just give you a little background. So most of you probably know a teacher goes through a bachelor's degree, right? And then they go get their credential. And that maybe has a master's involved. But you may not know that the university is then where they go to clear their credential. They can't keep working until they clear their credential. And from there, to move up on the pay scale, they have to have university credits. And it's this, march up, okay? And so as we look at that, what we started to investigate is there an impact on learning because of this training? And actually, from all the research, we found the ROI is lousy. It's really bad. And these are the babies of our future, right? And so as we looked at this, we said, there's got to be some different way to approach professional learning. And so as we looked at that, we started to develop 53 digital badges. That's where we are today. We launched, I said, February 1st. We're continuing to make new badges all the time. And we've had a tremendous reception from districts and schools in K-12, but also from publishers and manufacturers who are saying, hey, we need to do something different for the kids of our country. So as we look at this, we started, and I apologize about the formatting, but you can read, I'm sure. And really, universities focus on research, and that's a valuable thing. And they also focus on the teaching. And this third bubble can be called a lot of names, but usually it has to do with future workforce, sustainability, public knowledge, community, whatever you may call it. But as we looked at that, we focused on university as being the primary trainer of teachers in K-12. That's where they go. And this foundation is super valuable. It's not that we're saying it's not. It's the after that we're starting to find a problem with. And I'm not here to discuss foundation. Some of you may say, well, hey, teacher prep needs a little bit more work. That's not the point of this. But what we're talking about is the after piece. And you may not know this, but in our country, we spend over $18 billion a year in training for teachers in K-12 alone. That's huge, and that's every single year. And so we have to say, well, what's disrupting this? What's disrupting what we're doing? And so as we look at this disruption, it's really around cost, about technology, relevancy, economy, innovation, and even politics. And you could probably apply this to any vertical in the corporate world. But in the teaching profession, as we look at it, we have to say there's something alarming happening. Baby boomers are retiring. We have less and less students enrolling in the teacher credential program. In California, we lost 22,000 enrollments into the teacher credential program in 2012 and 2013. The California Department of Education just released that last month. It takes like 2 years to get that data. But when you start to look at New York and Florida, which, along with California, are the highest producers of teachers, this is a crisis. We will not have enough teachers for the future. So as a result, many states are looking for alternative certifications. So as we looked at this problem, we said, okay, through our research, cost, yes, time, disruption, and a number of other things. And then we found ineffective. It's not relevant to what's happening in a K-12 classroom, as well as it's not personalized. It's this one-size-fits-all approach, and then not accessible. Hey, when you're a teacher, you want it now at 11 p.m. Sunday night, because you have to teach tomorrow morning. And with the traditional education program, it's like you go to a class, hopefully that works. You want someone there. And then an industrial era model, meaning, it's about this sit and get. I spend 8 hours or 15 hours, I get a credential for sitting there. We're about competency. And I think this is really translating to other industries as well. So as we looked at this particular problem, we started to come up with a solution. And we said, one of the things that we wanted to focus on was, how can we make this affordable using technology? And George, I'm not going to go into digital badges. You did such a great job, and I thank you for that. George really defined that whole back end of digital badges. And except to say that we are working with the Badge Alliance, I kind of feel like a superhero here, Badge Alliance, but it is true, it's real, you can look it up. But we also knew that it needed to be effective and personalized as well as accessible. ROI needed to be apparent to schools and districts who were purchasing this for their teachers, as well as competency-based and not seat time. And digital badges were a way to do that. So as we moved on, we looked at digital badges. We found this initiative and we said, first of all, earning a resume does not say enough, or putting one together, I should say. It says, okay, here's what I say about myself, but what do others say about me? And we thank LinkedIn so much for being able to have some of this validation that's happening out there. And then we started to look at, what do I know about my workforce as a principal, superintendent, or a CEO? Well, when we start to validate through digital badges, and I'm not talking stickers here, I'm talking about things that are competency-based, we start to understand these skills and what someone has. And then that validation piece you see is critical. And that seat time starts to go away. So we looked into this and we created digital badges for teachers. So you can see their profile here. This is our learner, and then you see the 3 badges that they've earned. Those are clickable on social media sites, as well as their email and website. So it could be something like LinkedIn, it could be Facebook, it could be any number of social media site. And as they click on it, they start to see this is a competency-based evaluation. It's based on standards and course objectives. And you can see that they also can upload the evidence of their learning, their application. After they've learned something, they've done something. And that's really where we wanted to come up with the slogan of show what you know. We have teachers that apply their knowledge and they send it in to us. And then it's evaluated by our third-party evaluation system, which consists of credentialed teachers. So it's a peer evaluation, and I think you brought that up earlier tonight. And that evaluation says, based on a rubric and standards, we can say, yes, you know this. And should they be able to prove that knowledge, we then issue the badge. One of the things that I wanted to bring tonight is to just give you some background knowledge. And if you're interested in learning more about teacher professional development in K-12, this report is ideal. It was written in 2015, and it looks at the current state of professional development in K-12 markets, and it gives recommendation as well. The next report really is ideal for this particular conversation in higher ed. The Horizon Report of 2016 came out just recently, and it evaluates universities. And in the beginning of the report, it's pretty grim, but it gives a lot of great creative recommendations and articles that you can follow up on. So I highly recommend reading this particular report. So a startup, 3 weeks ago we started? And basically, we came across putting this all together after 2 years of research and putting together a library. We have an online library, 53 different pathways based on what a learner needs to know. It's stackable, it's open. We have an ed tech focus. We have university credit. We also have assessments based on knowledge and competency. Additionally, we offer micro-credentials and badges. And they are competency reviewed, and it's very affordable. We wanted to enter this space and not say, here's what you should be doing. We wanted to come alongside stakeholders and say, here's where you are, and we want you to move you into the future. And we wanted to promote a better way to evaluate the workforce. And in our particular case, it's the K-12 education sector. So we're participating in the Badge Alliance. We're working with them to create a set of national standards around the rigor of badges so that they're not just stickers. And we've been reaching out to schools and districts to partner with us, as well as universities. And we believe that universities still have a very valuable role to be played. And it's a matter of that futuristic thinking. So unfortunately, many universities are starting to feel threatened by badges, but community colleges apparently are not. And as we look at this trend, it's actually one of the top 4 trends in the the next education spotlight. And as we look at this trend, we know that's going to change. In fact, yesterday we just signed a partnership with the oldest university in California, and being able to offer continuing education units with our digital badges. So we're really excited about that. I think I would say that our call to action is to leverage today's technology and create a new and rigorous professional development, not only for K-12 teachers, but other verticals in the market as well. And we want to provide this meaningful learning pathway for learners. I want to thank you for letting us be here tonight, and I'm looking forward to our panel discussion.
The most anxiety I had about this evening was keeping Steve Wright under 10 minutes, and I think we got close to it. I'm going to ask the panelists a question. If each of them could take a shot at this, that would be great, and then we'll open it up to questions from the floor. So keeping in mind what Yogi Berra said, that it's tough making predictions, especially about the future, I'd like to ask our panelists, how do you see education evolving in the next 5 to 7 years? And given the rapid transformations taking place in learning, education, and technology, who will be the winners and losers in the next 5 to 7 years? And then finally, what business... I know it is, but I know you're up to it, Britt. And what business opportunities do you see emerging as a result of these transformations? So you want to start, Britt? Should we start at the other end?
I can start. As far as what's next, I think what we're seeing in ed tech is really augmented reality and virtual reality. I think those are some of the things. If any of you got to attend the Consumer Electronics Show in Vegas, right there, front row, we saw that as a huge piece in education and also in consumer products. I would also say makerspace, being able to problem solve and look at that whole makerspace, robotics. And then I would think wearable technology. We're already seeing it. I think that's going to change some of the things we're doing. Pass it off to you.
It's all going to happen.
It's all going to happen.
Steve, do you have an opinion?
Well, when I think about the future of education, I think we're going to go through a period of chaos, and there's going to be a lot of alternatives and confusion for a long period of time. And I think that's why the strategy we've adopted in my program is to try to minimize the confusion and the chaos. I think eventually it's going to be wonderful. I think the students are going to really benefit. People will have a much more precise idea of who they are, where they need to go, and what skills are necessary for this job and that job. I remember a review that we did about 6 months ago here in Santa Barbara with the Cottage Hospital. And they said ideally for the receptionist person they would get for the front of their hospital would be someone who had the appropriate healthcare licensure and everything else to do the procedures, but also had perhaps a digital badge in a concierge from the Hyatt institution or something like that. And so you can see how as a normal person kind of progresses through life and builds up different skills here and there, at some point in time they just might have that magic combination, and they might be in Ohio, and the job is in Santa Barbara. And I think we're going to see a lot more of the ability to find the right person. I see LinkedIn playing a big role in that. And so we're all going to become data elements now, and we're going to be very searchable.
George?
Yeah, I see a couple of developments starting to occur. I think one thing that you're going to see is multi-entity certificates. And it was along the lines, really, Steve, of what you were talking about, pathways, where the primary entity defines, here's the series of skills and knowledge you have to attain in order to be considered, valuable in this particular area. And then, frankly, the Navy is already starting to do this. They have a system called LADRS, L-A-D-R-S, stands for Learning and Development Roadmap. And what that is basically is an advanced listing of the courses, internal courses, the on-the-job training and skills, and the external certifications that a sailor or officer needs to have in order to attain a certain specialization and rating, as they call it. So basically, they aggregate course completions, say certified completion of skills and tasks on the job, like on an aircraft carrier, what have you, and then they have to go outside, let's say to Microsoft, Pearson, a community college, whatever, to take certain courses. I think you're going to see more of that collaboration between colleges and corporations to define series of courses, series of on-the-job, certified skills, and so on, and that will give you a mini degree, nano degree, as AT&T is already calling it. So that's one thing. The other thing I see is since we have so many higher ed people here, and I have a many number of years of working with higher ed, I think you're going to see what I'll loosely call subordinate awards within a degree pursuit, okay? Where right now everyone is required for their courses and their programs to have student learning outcomes at multiple levels, and basically these are general competencies that the student is supposed to attain, not simply topical knowledge. Okay. And what I see starting to happen is already happening with corporate learning organizations. They want their employees to have a certain aggregation of basic competencies. And I can tell you now, because I work with some very large corporations, they'd love to get it from the community colleges or other institutions, and they're not getting them in sufficient aggregation. So they're starting their own internal universities and training organizations to get them. I think community colleges in particular focused on saying, well, as you're pursuing your associate degree in this, if you also achieve these 6 basic competencies, you get a special award for those competencies. Let's say a certificate for basic competencies for business, something of that sort. I think you're going to see a lot of that. And I'm already beginning to see some organizations that are starting to talk to community colleges about exactly that type of thing.
And I'll add, first of all, I'm very excited for the future of learning. And I think education and learning are actually 2 really different things. Education is an institutional thing where there's definitions and gatekeepers. And what I see happening for both for scholarly pursuits as well as just personal and professional learning is that the gatekeeping is getting removed. So, for example, in a lot of organizations, you can't even get to the leadership training unless you've been there 7 years and this kind of thing. Well, when people buy Lynda, anyone can take the leadership training and develop themselves and start to invest in themselves and not wait for somebody to invest in them. So I think that that's going to empower a lot of people to step into their own growth and development and own it in a way that we haven't seen. But as that happens, then there's going to be a need to assess mastery, right? We're going to have to differentiate people again. It used to be that the BA was the ticket to the middle class, and now everyone's got a BA, so we've got new tickets to the middle class. So I think that as these things all proliferate, it's great for the learner, and ultimately we'll have to create levels of mastery to, again, assess differences. I also believe, and again, this is coming from kind of the neuroscience stuff that I've been studying and even my own experience in the world, technology is phenomenal, and technology has already far outstripped what the human brain can process. We are all overwhelmed with our devices. We're all overwhelmed at the source of information. And so what I'm seeing is a rise of boundaries, the idea of the digital detox, the idea of, LinkedIn just rolled out an amazing mindfulness program. We're seeing a lot of kind of return to the wisdom traditions, meditation, and you can use technology to do that. But I think we're also going to see just humanity needing to make peace with these devices and not keeping pace with the fact that they can go faster, smaller, better every 6 months, whether you want them to or not.
Thank you. Do you want to take some questions from the floor right now for all our panelists or anyone individually?
Good evening. I have a question for Dr. Andrietta. The question, you made a very powerful statement, very quick in passing, when you made your presentation, which is essentially that there's a disconnect between what and how we teach and the way that our brains learn, what neuroscience shows. I know you've written a book on it. Can you give us a couple of the major points? Because I think that would be very interesting to understand.
Okay. My book is available on Amazon for $3.99, so help yourself. Essentially what we're learning about the brain is there's 2 or 3 key structures that are involved with learning, and the most important is the hippocampus. It's what records information before it can even go into short and then long-term memory. And the hippocampus can only record about 20 minutes of information before it needs to be processed. So while we all know that the 1-hour, 2-hour lecture never worked, now we know why. So it's really driving these digestible bites of information. Now, I can do a very powerful 4-hour learning event, but I never go more than 15 minutes without a processing activity so that people can actually do something with that information. It can get pushed into short-term memory. And then while we're sleeping is actually where a lot of the stuff happens that pushes things into long-term memory. But from a learning design perspective, there's things you can do to look at how the brain typically takes information and attaches it to something you already know. It's called a schema. Well, from a learning design perspective, you can get intentional about what schema am I trying to activate in this learning moment. We also know that the aha moment is far more powerful than the telling moment. So if I can tell you something in 15, but I do an aha thing that you get there on your own in 25, I'll choose 25 because the learning is permanent at that point. You literally don't forget aha moments. So these are some of the things that are coming that are really shifting this whole, I've got a bunch of information to tell you, to looking at you as the learner and how can I empower and enliven your own moments of insight so that that learning becomes permanent for you. Completely shifts the way we design learning. And then the last part of it is I'm really a big believer in habit design and all the research in habit design. Most stuff that we're dealing with in the professional environment and work skills is habits. Your habit for being a manager, your habit for using software. And typically, when we're training people to do something new, we're asking them to leave a habit that's already well-grooved and comfortable and almost, they don't even have to think about it, and embrace something that's very awkward and uncomfortable. And we don't do a very good job of helping them build the neural pathways to make that faster and easier. And so a lot of the things that I argue for in the work that I do is we're habit designers, and you need to think about what's the behavior ultimately trying to create and work backwards from there.
One here, you got one back there.
Thank you. It sounded like I just heard a lecture, a phenomenal 4-part lecture on supply-side learning, kind of like supply-side economics. And, currently you've got the lowest labor force participation in U.S. modern history. With very young and actually older people pretty much left out of it. Resumes are actually no longer read by anyone. They're effectively search engine optimization, and if you don't do SEO on your resume, the robots won't find you. So what I'm wondering is anyone looking at the HR component that is the absolute necessary consumer of the phenomenally educated people that we will have as a result of all the wonderful things that have been discussed. And when I'm talking about that, I'm talking about, the woven wire products company that employs 80 people in Tennessee. And that's not hypothetical. I've been helping them redesign their processes, where half of their processes are currently illogical, but where probably half the U.S. workforce is currently employed in an archetype like that.
I'll just take a quick shot at that because, well, of course, there are different markets for skills. We're completing a study in the Bay region right now about software developers and the HR department, what's necessary for a Google and a Microsoft, and it is a lot different than what we see in a lot of our middle skill jobs. But apparently during that last recession, placement agencies became very popular as a way to staff temporary employees so companies could decide whether they liked the employee or not. And in large cases, especially in IT, they became the de facto HR department. So on the demand side, what has informed the pathways that I described to you is we've gone to placement agencies and asked them what are they looking for. They're literally placing hundreds of people a month. So tell us the skill sets you need. to fill the jobs. And that's how a big part of how we inform the design of those educational pathways.
I've got to follow up. I'd like to point out that in working with AT&T, which is one of my clients, talking to their senior VP of HR, they have so many resumes that they look at. They can't trust them, okay, in terms of accuracy. They can't equivalence them to the positions they're looking for. I'm sorry?
They don't actually read it.
Well, at some point they do. They go, they do automated searches, but nevertheless, they're not satisfied with what they find on there and whether or not they're accurate. So I want to get back to something that I mentioned in what we're trying to accomplish with the badging. The badges will come from a trusted source. They will be aggregated in a let's say a repository that's digital, and it's granular, so you don't have a text blob. Essentially, you have itemized skills and so forth. Various parties, whether they're employers or search agencies, will be able to do targeted searching and for specified skills and capabilities and competencies. And it will be a total revolution, I think, in the way people position themselves for jobs, how jobs are searched for, the degree to which their potential employer trusts the information that's there, and so on. So I think it's going to be dramatically different from the way it's done now. We have entire industries that have grown up around the construction, processing, and review, and so forth of a resume. It's going to be gone, in my opinion, in some time.
Well, and I would just add that, I don't know, I think LinkedIn made the resume kind of obsolete. That, you know, it's now an electronic record, and it's self-policed. So if I went on there and changed my profile to say that I was the CEO of lynda.com, it would be about 30 seconds before someone reported me, and it would be taken down. So the LinkedIn data is seen as very trusted because people can't really lie and inflate their skill sets on there. And then now LinkedIn's platform, if you haven't looked at it lately, keeps adding more things you can share about yourself. So you can upload portfolio pieces, you can share what you're doing in the volunteer space if that, you know, shows another side of you. There's all kinds of things you can add. So it's becoming kind of the de facto resume. And LinkedIn has a project where we're actually working with cities. It's called LinkedIn Cities. We go in and work with mayors and help them map the talent of their town and also the jobs that are coming available. And then they can map what the skill gaps are so that they can plan to close those skill gaps so that the people get those jobs. So I think that there's a lot to be done in all of this space, matching the talent with the jobs and the skills needed for those jobs.
Brett, you know this question was coming, but can you say a word about, you know, what was the strategy behind the acquisition of lynda.com by LinkedIn? Lynda.com is a huge local success story, and it was a big acquisition about a year ago.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you the official learning strategy, and also LinkedIn had been wanting to get into the learning space for a long time because it's a natural fit. If they're about helping people connect to opportunity, then you are about helping people close whatever skills gaps they have between what they have and the job that they want. So they'd been looking at getting into the learning space, and we were their number one choice, and it ended up being this sweetheart magic deal, which we're all very excited about. The official learning strategy and Lynda still operates as its own entity. It's lynda.com, a LinkedIn company, but we're continuing to integrate, is to use our data to create, aggregate, and surface the most relevant learning content based on skill gaps, job postings, outcomes, and company supply-demand data. Build world-class content and learning marketplace to help professionals acquire the skills and competencies they need. Connect learners to opportunities at scale directly via LinkedIn and via organizations buying it on their behalf. And finally, to enable companies to develop their talent, thereby realizing their higher productivity, better engagement, and stronger talent brands.
Okay. Thank you, Brett. Do we have a question over here?
Hi, so my name's Tyler with Cielo 24. I work within business development, and what we do is we provide higher education institutions with highly accurate transcripts and captions at rapid turnaround times, effectively creating solutions to help them achieve ADA compliance, which are federal mandates. We allow them to reach second language viewers as well as have in-video search and across the platform. being said, I'm very interested in learning what each of your institutions or what policies and procedures are in place at each of your institutions to push this creation of accessible media.
I don't know anything about that one.
Accessible to ADA compliance.
Yeah,
and then,
for
okay.
students and faculty alike.
Yeah, so one of the things that we really looked at is making sure that we had both audio, video, and transcripts available to all of our learners, as well as a live team of credentialed teachers, because that is our vertical, that are there to help with the process. And then the projects are really personalized around earning the badge. It's about relevancy, right? So as they're going through and looking at the requirements to the project, they can propose what they want to do to earn the badge. As long as it meets the standards and the requirements of the badge, we will then accept any given project. So one example may be that a school counselor talks to us and says, hey, this is what I'm doing at the school. I'd like to be able to have surveys as part of my training on using Chromebooks in our school. This is what I'd like to do. Here's how I'm going to show how I'm achieving the standards. We then accept that. So I think we try to give a lot of different ways for individualized learners to go through and complete the badge. And then again, on the badge side, they're all transparent and the learner owns the badge. They don't have to be a member of our organization to have that badge. Once they've earned it, it's theirs for life.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Other questions? We got a question, and then there's one over here.
So I work in tech, and that means that we get to feel the brunt of the pain when higher education doesn't bring the students to us or offer them to us out of college with the skills that we need. And I've been seeing this for a really long time. So my question is, effectively, LinkedIn is a good example of a company that might have access to some of the very best data that attributes skills that are required right now in the next 3 months in these tech-type jobs, and then the job titles that they would be associated with and how long the person's had that role, and in addition, the types of jobs that have been open, unfilled for those sorts of things. So is there anything, so it's a two-part question, is there anything being developed that would allow that sort of data to come out of LinkedIn and go over to Steve and to George and to solve Steve's research problem on that?
Well, there's a lot of vendors involved in what we call labor market information, which do that. I think Burning Glass is one of the primary ones nowadays, that they have algorithms that search the web and identify all of the placed ads, and they can remove duplicates, and they can tell the ones that are fake somehow and everything else. And then from their data, we're able to, and we do on a regular basis, review all that material to find out what's in demand. And as you work with that material, you find out that it's not always true either. When people place ads online, I call it the Match.com effect. They're always asking for more than they deserve. And and so they're asking for PhDs and bachelors when really they would settle 50% or more of the time for someone who just had the skill set they're looking for. So we take that, it's kind of like a multi-legged stool. We look at the Burning Glass information. EDD has some information. We do advisory groups. We talk to placement agencies, and we have regular experts that we talk to. And we do that for almost every class, and we do that for almost every pathway, and it's a huge undertaking.
It is massive. The second part of that question is what does that interface look like that would be extended to all of the universities, higher education, where they would be able to get that access to that information on a very regular basis, like daily?
That's something that can definitely be
and
improved.
Bring it in.
There is a business opportunity.
Excuse me?
There's the business opportunity.
Yeah, really. And I mentioned very briefly at the end of my presentation the entertainment program for LA and the software development one for the Bay Area. In both of those cases, we'll be sharing that information about the jobs. We did for example, software development, we did a 3-year study on which software programs were increasing the most in terms of demand and what percentage they were of the entire workforce demand. So we have rate of increase and we have percent of volume. And then we also took that a step further to see in the same ad what other softwares were they normally clustered with, because very often you don't just need to know Python. You need to know Python and something else. So we've been looking for that whole cluster of skills. And then we took it a step further to see which institution, what kind of businesses are they associated with? Is it banks? Is it entertainment? Is it high tech? Because all this serves to narrow it down as to where are these jobs really. Then after we did all that stuff, then we went out and talked to people for 3 months. And so something like that is exhaustive. It is really hard. I would say the biggest challenge we have for young people today is giving them good counseling information. They just don't know. I don't know. I work real hard to figure this stuff out, and it's challenging. I'm hoping LinkedIn comes up with an answer.
Well, I was just going to say LinkedIn does partner with all kinds of organizations, and we do have opportunities to share the data, so that's definitely something that's a possibility. And we have relationships with a lot of universities.
We've got 2 questions here. Let's make these our final questions.
So my question is from the point of view of a parent of 2 teenagers, thinking for the last 5 years, hoping that I could tell them, look, don't spend $200,000 on a 4-year education. Instead, do this because, it's getting disrupted and this is the future. And I don't think I can tell them that yet because I don't know whatever this is. I don't think it's there yet. So my question for you is, what is it and when is it coming?
I'll take a stab at that one. I mean, I think, this is where higher ed is challenged, is right now, because we stopped funding public education and we put the burden on families, people now are saying, for this money, I want to see what my value proposition is. And so universities like the University of Phoenix were overpromising career possibilities, and now the government is cracking down and making them show the evidence for those promises, which I think is good. But the one thing that's interesting is when I go in, I do a lot of consulting with corporations. One of the biggest challenges that still exist is we still have a maturation process that needs to happen for young adults. And we know that the human brain actually doesn't achieve full maturity until the age of 25. And so one of the benefits of a college education, and we talked about it earlier, is in addition to getting some information, you also have this maturation process that occurs in a relatively safe environment where you learn to interact with people and share ideas and have conflicts and share food and clean up after yourself and try not to hurt people. And when people skip that process or they don't go into an environment that pushes them to learn and grow in that way, we see it in the workplace. So right now I'm actually consulting with a company who's asking me to come in to do professional presence training with their millennials, many of whom are super smart, but who really have kind of bypassed the maturation process. So I would say there's still a value in our society to have that, and also education moves so slowly that for how fast tech is going and how much driving change in professional careers, we need something more nimble and agile to help people gain and stay on top of their professional skills. So it's fine. It's kind of like teasing out the differences and where those things still play together nicely and where they separate.
Rick, we have one final question here. Do you want to add something, George?
Well, I just want to add that in general, what I see out there is that, I personally am a big believer in the 4-year college education and beyond. The college degree is losing value. I don't know how many of you noticed, Google announced that they're no longer valuing a college degree, not to the extent it was before as a requirement. Okay, so the corporate world out there is saying we can't. First of all, automatically grant the kind of value that a degree used to have before, and we're looking for specific skills. We're willing to look elsewhere, and I think that's what's going to happen partially as a result of badges from multiple entities for multiple types of skills aggregated from certain experts and expert organizations, and I think that will start to create some real problems for higher education, significant ones. The Carnegie unit, in my view, is one of the significant sources of the problem. Okay, the corporate world doesn't have 4 years to train somebody. 4 years is 2 life cycles in the corporate world. Yep. Think about that. Okay,
If not 4.
If not 4, you're right.
Right.
At least 2 life cycles, maybe 4, and the same with the Navy. They can't wait for 4 years for a new sailor to be ready to work on a jet engine. Okay.
One final question. Here, Rick, no. With the microphone, right there.
Yeah, understood.
I think this is the perfect closing question because the last question and Britt's response really related to undergraduate education, and I appreciate all the information that the panelists have presented, but I was wondering if you could comment on what you think the implications are for graduate education, if you see anything different or additional beyond what you've already talked about.
I think just coming from a vertical of K-12, it's huge. I think as we discussed, there's still a value in that undergraduate education, and I'm sorry, you're probably going to have to look at that, or at least some blended program. But as you look at, upper graduates and the graduate programs, you start to now say there's alternatives. And I think that's where we're seeing a lot here with with micro-credentials, credentialing programs out of universities even. That's where you start to see the innovation and the experimentation happening, because I think it is important to get that foundation, as Britt talked about and some of the others here. I think once we go beyond that as a society, we're able to start to accept some of the alternatives, the expense to a graduate program, and we start to say, you know what, alternative credentials work. And companies are looking at this because they're saying, hey, if you work for us, we will help you get that credential, and it has a currency to it. And so I think that's where the interesting piece is right now, and it's an easier place to go to. And I think it's going to evolve over time, but I do still think the bachelor's degree is very important.
I'd like to jump in there, too. I have a lot of admiration for graduate degrees, and I've collected a few. I keep them quiet these days because I found they never got me promoted at work. But what we found in the community college system is that we're kind of like the postgraduate school for a lot of people. They get a 4-year degree in something that they thought was important when they got it. And they go out, they find there's no work in that. And then they come back and they take web design or graphic arts. They learn some kind of hands-on thing. They say, okay, I'm real smart now, but I got to be able to do something. So they come back to us. And a lot of them don't even know how to do Outlook. You cannot get a job through Manpower unless you know how to do Outlook. So that's really not an answer to your question about graduate school. Okay. So there's still a whole practical side to education that people are missing when they go to a 4-year. And I think that graduate school originally was intended to be that place where you get that precise extra training to make you really proficient at something on a high level. And so I think that's still a value. I would hope so.
I've got a quick comment on that one. I go back to a comment I made earlier where I think, first of all, I think that graduate degrees are still highly valued in certain areas especially. But combining it with collaborative work with experts or parts of organizations in that field, whether it's interning, whatever it is, okay, the combination of your advanced degree plus if it results in badging is great, but working with acknowledged experts or organizations that are at the state of the art in the field that you're working in, okay? And I think you're going to see a lot more of that, where you'll see on people's resumes in their present form or later on the badge aggregates. Here's your advanced degree. Here are the things you did associated with that. And there's actually a timeline that you can see in how they were connected. It wasn't 5 years ago or 7 years ago. It was while you were getting your degree and shortly after your degree and before you had your permanent position someplace. Those are really going to be valuable. It's currency. Somebody called it the Bitcoin, the new Bitcoin for learning. That's what badges are going to become. Okay, it's a new currency for what your competencies are.
I'll just close it out so you hear from all of us. I would say that because if you think about the bachelor degree, it's so proliferated now that so many people have it. And the majority of the workforce hold down, it's the pyramid structure, right? So the advanced degrees are still kind of sought after because you're bringing someone who has a deeper level of expertise or intellectual knowledge about a topic. But for the average worker that's doing kind of average level work, you need them to be up and quick on those job skills. And so there's a need for that learning to be faster and replenished quicker. And there's a different thing that people with advanced degrees are hired for, which is either that deeper research expertise or that higher level thinking. I don't mean to paint broad brushstrokes, but if you just think about the typical kind of pyramid thing. So there's not the same level of competition for the jobs that are kind of earmarked for people with masters and MBAs and stuff like that. Although, we certainly see that rise and fall. When the job market is bad, more people get advanced degrees, and then all of a sudden there's a glut of MBAs, and then those jobs have less value. So it's still supply and demand, but the supply is smaller for the higher level degrees.
Could I please? Please?
Go ahead, Steve.
Oh, thank you. It's not really a graduate degree, but it's kind of neat. Somebody goes to school and they get an IT training, and they go out there and an IT technician for like 5-6 years, something like that. They're making $80,000 a year. They're doing okay. What's the next step? They still don't have their bachelor's, by the way. Well, B2B sales. Selling from one business to another at IT. You can make $150,000, $170,000 a year doing that stuff. But what do you need to know? Well, you need to know PowerPoint. You've got to have presentation skills. So this IT person needs to go back and get this little bundle of skills. Maybe they need to know Visio. They probably need to play golf. So we're going to have to put in some golf or maybe some wine tasting, depending on whether it's the Bay Area or LA. You're laughing, but this is true. This is real life. And so there's a kind of a graduate degree for workforce skills. And we're so excited about looking into that next, because they think that's where we grab all these people that are in their 30s to 50s. They're like, now what? And we got to repurpose them. We got to retool them. We got more people that are technologically obsolete at age 35 now than ever before. We got to bring them back in, and we got to teach them all this stuff. And it's going to be fun. It's going to be a reinvention for them, and it'll be a lot of challenge for us.
So I'm thinking digital badge and wine tasting and golf.
A digital badge and golf.
Yeah, okay.
And on that note,